What you got going on? I don't let you demons. I don't let you demons take my soul. You demons want to take my soul away. I don't let you demons steal my soul. I don't know what's going on. What I see you first. What's going on? What you got going on? Why am I here? I just want to talk to my mom and dad. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
Checking the restricted trade.
They're both.
But I used to. I'm not fast, but why are all these change?
This is Aiden Fucci. He is feigning having visual and auditory delusions in an attempt to get away with murder, but it didn't work. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to be covering the senseless death of Tristyn Bailey and how many people were directly warned about what was going to happen but refused to act. All the crimes I have covered across my channel have been senseless acts of violence and should never have happened. But this one is one of the most nonsensical, as there was genuinely no motive to his crime. From a psychological standpoint, this case is frustrating, as it's difficult to understand why something like this occurred. In cases of family annihilators like Chris Watts or Josh Powell, it's clear that they ended the lives of those closest to them in order to protect their own ego and spite their wives. In the case of Nancy Brophy and Sherry Papini, they were trying to advance their lives through their actions. But in this case, where a young girl who had just begun her life was so senselessly destroyed, even the admitted murderer has stated that there was no motive beyond he just wanted to kill someone, and if it hadn't been her, it would have been someone else, which we know to be true, as he seemed to have planned to kill another person that very night. We will be talking about the death of a young girl, and if that is content you would rather not ingest, I would highly recommend you click off of the video now. Your well-being is more important, and if there is an inkling that this video will upset you, please don't watch it. The subject, as always, was requested by multiple patrons, subscribers, and 3 people who claimed to have known Tristyn, including one who provided evidence of cheering with her, and it's my sincere hope that I cover what happened to her as accurately and respectfully as possible. If there is a video you would like to see covered, or a case you would like to see more attention brought to, feel free to email me at dreading.official@gmail.com. I'm working through emails as quickly as I can, and it's my hope to cover all of your suggestions. But with all of that said, let us begin. Tristyn Bailey was exceptionally well loved in her community, due in large part to her outgoing nature. According to her mother, Tristyn was an extrovert since birth, and seemingly always the loudest in the room. She cried louder than anyone in the nursery. She cheered louder than anyone, and according to her friends, you could always hear her before she entered a room, because her laugh would announce her entrance. As a third party, my words ring hollow when describing Tristyn, so I will let those who knew her best describe her.
For those of you that were blessed to personally know her, you know what an amazing and fiery personality she had, and you can attest that she was the kind of friend that you would like to have, and she always had your back. Tristyn's determination to be front and center was evident the day that she was born because she was the loudest one in the nursery. She was the only blonde one in the nursery, and she was just, here I am. She had a drive in her soul to be the best and always give 100% to achieve her goals. A small story about her drive is when we put Tristyn in swimming, thinking that this was an amazing sport and a life skill. And while she liked it, it was not her passion, so she moved on to lacrosse. Let's talk about that. The realization that it's really, really hot in the outdoors in Florida. And this is not her thing either. But boy, did she want to cheer. I personally could not bear the thought of going back into the cheer and dance world, as I knew the time and commitment that it took for me coaching cheer and her older siblings spending up to 6 hours a day at the cheer gym or the dance studios. But Tristyn was determined to prove to me that she was going to be a cheerleader whether I liked it or not. From teaching herself how to do her splits, her back bends, her back walkovers, just to prove to me how much she wanted to be a cheerleader, I caved. And so it began. This is where her passion and drive grew to be the best she could be. Over the past couple of years, Tristyn was always on all-star cheer and in school cheer. This year, she shared team captain on her POA cheer team with one of her besties. It was a huge goal for her. As our all-star cheer family knows, Summit and Worlds is your goal. Tristyn's ultimate goal was to be in one of these. While at Zone All-Star Cheer, her team achieved getting that bid, but it was sadly taken away from COVID. This past year, Tristyn had switched gyms to Infinity All-Stars, and she became more determined than ever to make that goal happen. These girls from Majesty worked so hard and developed a bond that is unbreakable. They won their UCA cheer competition, and that dream came alive as they got the bid to compete at Summit. Tristyn, you did it. You met your goal. Her drive and passion did not stop there. When she would come home after school, I was always given the tea of the day, and a lot of it because she had a lot to say. She spilled a lot of tea. I would sit here in amazement listening to some of her stories, and I learned she was the kind of friend that I would like to have. She always defended those who could not defend themselves. Some of you may not know it, but she was very sensitive, and she never wanted to disappoint anyone. Tristyn cared deeply for her friends and always wanted to have as many friends as she could. And oh my goodness, she was so funny, you guys, so funny. She could be a silly teenager, but could have heart-to-hearts with an adult like she was an adult. And I think that she truly forgot that they were my friends too. She tried to take them over. She was an honor roll student, determined to succeed academically, going as far as taking her first high school credit online this year just to get ahead in school. There are so many things I could share about this sweet girl, and in the future I will. For now, I will follow what Tristyn has always said. Get it together. You got this, Mom. Always and forever, my cheerleader and my sweet baby girl.
In stark opposition to how Tristyn was remembered, many people described Aiden Fucci as being a rude, abrasive, and upsetting child. Aiden was born November 17, 2006, to parents Crystal Smith and Jason Fucci, and it seemed that they had a turbulent home life. According to statements that Aiden would make to his friends, his father was incredibly abusive, assaulting him on a number of occasions, even going so far as to punch him and try and choke him. He characterized his mother as being vacant and uncaring, and that he was the least loved in their household. Aiden felt as if he was the black sheep of the family, that everyone would be happier without him, and discussed how much he hated his entire family nearly every day. His siblings would say otherwise, telling the police that their father wasn't abusive and their mother, father, and stepfather were all incredibly present, kind, and loving people. Besides Jason's arrest for getting into a fight in front of Aiden when he was 10 years old at a convenience store, the family was supportive and incredibly well off. They admitted that they would get spanked if they misbehaved, but only as a last resort, and that they had never seen Aiden be hit by either one of their parents. Other members of the extended family would characterize Aiden as being a relatively normal child, albeit a bit spoiled. He had a tendency to fly off the handle when he felt like he was being penalized, and when he didn't get his way, he would make the lives of people around him hell. Academically, Aiden also struggled, though most of his teachers would state that Aiden was mature for his age, but had a hard time focusing in class. Teachers would claim he had no want to learn and therefore never paid attention. Throughout his academic career, he struggled with math, English, and science, and would begin to act out in these classes. His teachers theorized that this was to distract from his difficulty comprehending the subject matter, and mentioned that they believed that when he couldn't immediately understand something, he would emotionally shut down. That way, he wouldn't be embarrassed over what he believed to be an intellectual failure. His teachers made sure to notate that he was an intelligent kid, one who had a lot of potential if he applied himself to his schooling, but whenever he struggled, he would stop caring. That way, it was his choice to fail. January of 2021, Aiden had begun dating a girl in class. While her name has since become public, I will not be repeating it in this video as she is a minor, but for ease of understanding, we will simply refer to her as his girlfriend. Aiden and her both enjoyed horror and gore, and often joked about taboo subjects, like death, rape, and murder. Aiden often took his interests a bit too far. Whereas his girlfriend loved watching horror films and liked fictional gore, he would make it clear that he had an affinity for the real thing. When they were discussing their morbid shared interest, Aiden would often pull up real-life beheading videos on YouTube and play them, commenting on how cool it was that the graphic material was so easily accessible. He likewise tried to share his interest with his best friend, whose name I will also redact from this video, and his friend would state that he found the footage disturbing. Aiden was said to be somewhat dominant and controlling to his friend, forcing him to watch and do things he otherwise had no interest in. His friend would tell police and psychologists that this wasn't the case, that he and Aiden were equals, but Aiden's girlfriend, other mutual friends, and their own family members would state the opposite. Aiden would often greet his girlfriend by pretending to slit her throat, and made it a habit to sneak up behind her and pretend to cause her mortal harm. She validated this behavior to friends and family, saying that that was just how Aiden was, and when anyone expressed concern, she simply said they didn't understand their sense of humor. He would also pretend to stab her on occasion, which she took as a joke, despite the fact that he had often carried knives on him and liked to show them off. He had 2 knives in his collection, which he named Picker and Poker. His friend would mention that on a nearly daily basis, Aiden would discuss how he wanted to kill someone, and how he thought the feeling of stabbing someone, cutting their throat, and watching all the blood leave their body would be the most exhilarating feeling in the world. In response, his friend would disagree, and state that he didn't think murder would feel good, but Aiden would continue to go on, often for long periods of time, discussing what he would do if he had the chance. Over time, Aiden began to express incredibly controlling and aggressive behavior with his girlfriend, threatening to kill boys she was seen talking to, even if they were relatives and friends. She stated that he was no longer allowed at her home, as he repeatedly made mention of how easy it would be to kill her there. In some statements, it appeared that he displayed some form of self-control and insisted himself that he wouldn't break. But in other statements, it seems she was the one to place that boundary. When he would talk about his violent fantasies to his girlfriend and best friend, Aiden Aiden went into detail about who he would kill. He was interested in killing people he liked. That way, in some regards, he'd have an especially fond memory of them. He also insisted that he was more interested in killing boys than girls, but admitted girls would be easier to kill than boys. But Aiden wasn't just all talk. He also had regularly gotten into fights and made things physical. On one occasion, while out with his girlfriend, Aiden had stolen another kid's vape pen. He was taller than the other kids and was more physically imposing, so when the kid tried to get his vape pen back, Aiden attacked him, hitting him multiple times until he ran away. At the beginning of May 2021, Aiden once again told his girlfriend that he was going to kill someone soon, but this time he seemed to be more serious. While hanging out, he told her that she shouldn't be surprised if he murdered someone within the next month, and went into detail about how he planned to do it. He claimed that he was going to go out one night and walk around until he found someone else. He tricked that person into going into the woods with him, and once alone, he'd slit their throat and stabbed them repeatedly. Once more, she believed her boyfriend was joking, but in a few short days, their classmate would go missing, having last been seen with Aiden. In the early morning hours of Mother's Day, May 9th, 2021, Tristyn Bailey would sneak out of her family home to meet up with Aiden Fucci. They went over to a mutual friend's house and hung out for a short while before leaving together. The pair was spotted on security cameras walking around 1:15 a.m. at the Durban Amenity Center. Aiden would somehow get Tristyn to follow him into the wooded area nearby, and once out of sight of the road, he would begin to attack her. Tristyn would be stabbed 114 times in total, with Aiden only stopping when his knife broke off in her head. At the beginning of the attack, Tristyn was fighting Aiden, and many of the wounds on her body were defensive, but he was determined to kill her. Stabbing someone 114 times would have been exhausting, and normally indicate extreme rage, but Aiden barely knew Tristyn. He had no reason to be angry with her, and the sheer amount of energy he expelled would lead experts to believe that he got a tremendous amount of pleasure from the murder, pleasure that experts believe to have been sexual in nature. 2 hours later, on that same security camera, Aiden would be caught sprinting into the opposite direction, completely alone. The next time Aiden would be seen would be on his home's security footage, slowly walking to the door and entering the home. Later on that morning, Tristyn would be reported missing at 10 a.m. Her parents immediately called the police when they found she was no longer in bed, and they flooded social media looking to see if anyone had heard from their daughter. They made posters, reached out to friends, and began organizing search parties, hoping that their daughter had simply lost track of time and was just out at a friend's house. The police were given a list of names of close friends that Tristyn could have been with, and immediately set out to talk with each of them. Notably, Aiden's name was not on the list. At the same time, another officer was going around the neighborhood collecting as much Ring doorbell footage as possible. One of the first people that the police talked to was Aiden's longtime friend. He purposely misled the police and told them that he had no idea where Tristyn was, and he hadn't seen her since school. However, a short while later, after the police talked to some other sources, he told them that Tristyn had actually come over to his house early that morning and had left with Aiden around 1 a.m. Mere hours after the horrific attack, the police arrived at Aiden's home to ask him questions. Aiden's mother and stepfather consented to the questioning and were present the entire time. Aiden stated that he had walked home with Tristyn that night, but the pair had gone separate ways shortly after he turned onto her street around 1:30 a.m. He then claimed he spent the next 2 hours or so walking around aimlessly, bored and not wanting to go home. The story was weird, but not entirely unbelievable, as it was early in the investigation. The officers noted down his story and went to pursue other leads, still noting that Aiden had been the last person to see Tristyn alive. Nearly an hour later, the same officer returned to talk to Aiden once more. He needed to confirm Aiden's story and asked him to drive with him along the route that Tristyn and he had walked down. That way, they could collect any Ring doorbell or security camera footage. Aiden agreed, with his stepfather stating he would follow behind them in the family's golf cart. After the officer left the home with her son, Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, was seen on her home's security camera footage entering her son's room, grabbing a pair of pants off the floor, and attempting to hand wash them in the bathroom sink. She then takes the jeans downstairs and puts them in the family's washing machine. These jeans were reported to be the ones that Aiden had been wearing that night and were covered in Tristyn's blood. It seems that sometime during that morning, potentially when her son was being questioned by police in her home, Crystal realized realized that her son had killed the young girl, and instead of telling the police, bringing him in herself, or trying to get him to surrender to police custody, she sought to destroy evidence. It was while on this drive that Aiden changed his story for the first time. He claimed that he hadn't left Tristyn on her own to walk the rest of the way home, but instead that they had gotten into a small fight after she made a pass at him. According to his new story, while walking in the dark and talking, Tristyn tried to grab his penis, and he responded by pushing her down. He claimed that she had hit her head on a rock, but otherwise, he didn't know what happened to her as he ran away. He showed the officer where the scuffle was said to have occurred, and once again explained that if something had happened to Tristyn, it had to have happened after he pushed her. The complete change of story stood out to the officer, and he immediately began to suspect that Aiden had played a larger part in the girl's disappearance. He placed Fucci in the back of his cop car and drove the teen to the area in which the search for Tristyn was taking place. While he was writing a report in the front of the car, Aiden became belligerent, punching and kicking the back of his seat. The officer asked Aiden what he was doing, to which he responded he was going to go to jail for this bullshit. Again, his change in demeanor was alarming, and while they didn't have anything concrete to tie him to the crime, it became clear that he knew more than what he was saying. At some point that same day, Aiden's friend, whose house he and Tristyn had been to prior to the murder, was also placed in the back of that same vehicle, and it was then Aiden made the following Snapchats. The first was just a photo of his reflection in the back of the cop car, with the caption, "Hey guys, anyone seen Tristyn lately?" The second two were videos.
We're having fun in a fucking cop car.
Yep. Tristyn.
What's up, guys?
Yep.
Tristyn, if you fucking walk out the damn
When you see this in a month.
car, cuz. Tripping, dude. This in a fucking cop car, cuz.
It seemed to some extent Aiden and his friend were trying to insinuate that Tristyn would come back, as they repeat, when she sees what's happening here. But at the very least, Aiden knew she would never see the public's love for her. When the pair was being held by the police, a massive search was underway for Tristyn. They knew roughly the last area she had been in, and were determined to find the 13-year-old. And sadly, they would. At 6 p.m., Tristyn's body would be found, and the search would be called off. Following the discovery of Tristyn's body, Aiden was brought into the police station to undergo more questioning. At this point, he had not been arrested, but the police were confident that he, at the very least, had a hand in Tristyn's murder. He was placed in an interview room with his father and mother, and unbeknownst to them, their conversation was recorded. The following is that recording as it was played in court.
Then you respond.
This is very serious, Aiden. You can't act like I don't know. I don't know. You can't, and you can't
You
say
understand
nothing.
this is serious? Clearly. You understand, right?
Mm-hmm. Everything you say will affect you.
At this point, both Crystal and Jason are likely aware of their son's guilt, as Crystal has already tried to destroy evidence, but they make sure to stop short of saying anything like that, due to the environment that they're in.
That Snapchat that you did was not very smart.
Not at all. Now we have people on the phone in our house, not in our car stuff. Because of that Snapchat thing you did. It's all over. You're all over the internet and everywhere. Social media.
It is on social media. You'll probably come stay with me after we get done with this. Just for your well, safe being.
A 13-year-old girl is dead, and yet his parents are more upset about a Snapchat he made, and how people are upset with their family now. Their priorities in this situation are incredibly strange, and to even say they are upset is a stretch, as they are both extremely calm and talking to Aiden in a very measured tone. These were people that Aiden had told his friends were wildly abusive and hated him, but at this moment they are treating him kindly and with respect, which he does not deserve. If they don't believe he was involved in the murder, which is highly unlikely, his lack of remorse for posting a Snapchat mocking a girl's disappearance is in poor taste. He should feel bad about that, but he lacks any sort of reaction at all.
You had no screws or nothing on you, right?
No, sir.
You sure don't smell?
I'm hungry. I don't want to sit. I know my head so bad.
Ugh.
cop car that we don't know about?
Did you tell them anything different in the cop car that we don't know about? Crystal knows he killed Tristyn, and she is trying to find a way to cover for her son. She is attempting to get on the same page as her son. That way, they can bolster any alibi or story he tells.
No. Do you know if this girl got picked up?
I told him about her dealer.
You think she got picked up by him?
Probably did. She said she wouldn't come home.
At some point, Aiden began saying that Tristyn was dating a drug dealer, or she was going to see one later that night. His story was obviously fake.
She said she's gonna find somebody. Just
After
dead
you
in her
left her
office.
there walking? Like, you think she got picked up after that? She just kept walking?
Probably. I don't know.
Do you know if she turned the other direction or she was just still walking behind you?
She pushed her down and you walked away. We shouldn't be talking.
I was just asking what he told the cops. I was just asking what he told them.
As you walked away, you came straight home. You didn't turn back around and see where she went. What were you doing outside that late at night?
I was at Trey's house hanging out with them.
Did you kiss or do anything with this girl?
Be honest as you can to them.
Two.
Yes.
Yeah, I kissed her.
Anything further?
Mm-hmm.
So your DNA's gonna be on her. You saw your shoes were off on the camera. All your shoes off.
Got my favorite hood. And the shoes give me blisters.
Did you come home and leave again?
Mm-hmm.
Did you sneak back out or you're still at Trey's house the whole day?
I was at Trey's house.
Okay. It's just the one night I didn't ask where you were, so I was wondering. This is serious, man.
It's very serious.
This isn't no joke. This is your whole life. Your whole life.
And hers.
And ours. And your brothers and sisters. And don't forget they can't go to school alone.
Why?
Because the kids will hurt them. You're gonna keep me, right?
I don't know. They don't have no evidence that I know of yet. Unless you know anything I don't know.
Hmm?
Did y'all have sex?
Did she really grab you and you just really pushed her, or was that
No, she did.
okay?
You don't know what happened to her after you pushed her?
Did she say ow or get mad?
And she said Aiden. She was like, Aiden. I think I pushed her, but I told her to act on. And she walked off.
Do you know what direction she walked in?
Probably the other way, because she wasn't next to me anymore.
You didn't look back or nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to worry about, right?
Mm-hmm. drink.
You still on yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Wednesday. What a nightmare.
I just hope I keep waking up.
Me too. I'm gonna go home and get your clothes.
More clothes.
The clothes you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be nothing on those clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wear khakis or blue jeans?
And blue jeans.
You sure is that wrong?
Again, after the second interview where Aiden was taken to show where he was with Tristyn the night before, grabbed the pants he'd been wearing the night before and hand washed them in the sink, then put them in the home's washing machine. This was all caught on the home's security camera. She is aware that there is blood on the jeans, as she was the one who had tried to clean it, and it seems she wants credit for that.
When we looked on the camera, you were wearing khakis. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see this 20-year-old kid? You didn't get in his car
Mm-hmm. I've never even saw him before. I just heard about him.
that night?
Hmm?
You just heard about him that night?
I don't know, I've heard about him many times.
Do you have the black card?
I don't know.
Are you not scared?
Not really.
Not really?
I'm a little scared, but
If he didn't do nothing, I'd be worried about him.
No, that's not awesome.
He didn't do nothing, right?
what's it?
It's a hell of a bad time, bad spot. Leaving a 13-year-old girl by herself in the middle of the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever time is not smart, bro. Walking home with her in the middle of the night, that wasn't smart either. You stay away from females.
You stay away from females. His son killed a girl, and he is trying to make the takeaway that Aiden needed to stay away from Tristyn because she was the issue. Jesus Christ.
Anything could happen. Did you kiss her this night?
Mm-hmm.
This last night?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Trey's house?
Mm-hmm.
On the walk? I was gonna see why you kissed her and all of a sudden she grabbed you and then you pushed her.
Find your story to stay true.
This would have been good advice if only Aiden hadn't changed his story 3 times by this point. The family trying to coach their son on how to get away with violently killing a 13-year-old girl and talking about where he will go after they get him out is extremely strange. Instead of thinking about protecting their other children and making a safe home for their family, they are more concerned on getting their son off on a murder.
Think about every question he's going to ask you. Before you answer it, you think about the answer again. The next hour or two.
You're gonna make a phone call, ask him the same question, and make sure he gives him the same answer. I'm gonna badger you, badger you, badger you, badger you. Till your answer changes. Or even goes off a little bit. Hopefully you did it the right way.
Who is your phone?
The officer.
Did you get your food at least?
Mm-hmm.
I know what you did, just I got you back in there.
Yeah, that was good.
Did he ask you any questions inside the car?
Mm-hmm. Just about what I look like.
Did you tell Dylan to get Preston?
No, Jacob, and Jimmy will let him run until he left his house until you get him.
Dave says it's going to take at least 72 hours to do the autopsy.
What's that?
This conversation, as well as Aiden's changing stories, the security camera footage, and a search warrant being served at the family home, finding multiple articles of clothing with Tristyn's blood on them, Aiden was arrested on May 10th, 2021. Following his arrest, Aiden was jailed in a juvenile detention center to await trial. However, he would immediately be transferred to an adult prison after he displayed incredibly aggressive behavior toward the younger inmates. Despite this being a mostly adult prison, there is a juvenile section where Aiden was said to be housed. But once more, he created conflict. On numerous occasions, when he would interact with the other juvenile offenders, he would make threats on their life. He told multiple prisoners that he was going to rape and kill them, and guards had a hard time dealing with him, as he didn't seem to care about his emotional or physical well-being. He also stated at several points that he would kill other inmates like he had killed Tristyn, and couldn't wait to murder again, as it was the best moment of his life. Despite repeatedly claiming to have killed the young girl while in prison, Aiden planned to fight the charges. He originally pled not guilty to the crime, and for years drew out the trial process as a way to harm the Bailey family and continue to leverage his power against the community. It wasn't until jury selection was about to start when he changed his plea to guilty. After a 2-day sentencing hearing, Aiden was sentenced to life in prison, with his case eligible for review in 25 years. Many legal commentators stated the change in plea was specifically for this eligibility, as he could get out earlier than if he had a jury trial, but it's unlikely that that will ever happen. The sheer brutality of this crime and the fact that Aiden has never shown a speck of remorse has ensured that, as I claimed earlier, this crime is nonsensical. Aiden was a child who killed another child, and there is no excuse for what he did. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to see more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe. If you would like to support this channel, as we are often demonetized by YouTube and copyright claimed by third parties, our Patreon will be linked in the description box down below. Again, thank you for watching, and remember to stay safe.